Final Fantasy Tactics: The Ivalice Chronicles is still a good few months away, but if its recent reveal got you in the mood for some good strategy gaming, don't worry, Steam's got you covered with the Turn-Based Thursday Fest. It's a huge sale on a massive range of different strategy and tactics games, and today we're going to talk about my personal picks from it that I recommend that you go and pick up. My name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman, and welcome back to the channel. Hello everyone, if you enjoy what I do, including coverage of good sales and news and other events in the turn-based strategy or turn-based tactics genres, then a like on this video and a subscription to the channel would be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. So for a little bit of context here, what even is Turn-Based Thursday and Turn-Based Thursday Fest? Well, Turn-Based Thursday, as the name would imply, is a weekly event, a gathering of indie devs typically, where they can show off their strategy titles, their turn-based tactics titles, etc., where they can show off their games and their projects, what progress they've been making on new titles, get more eyes on titles that have already released or maybe going to be releasing into a 1.0 version sometime in the near future, and generally build a healthier ecosystem for this relatively niche genre that we all love. Turn-Based Thursday Fest is a once-a-year event, a week-long event, where you have a massive number of very, very considerable sales on a lot of these titles on Steam, as well as coverage from content creators showing off these games by doing streams, videos, and the like, so that more of y'all who may very well find a new favorite in this great collection can actually get your eyes on it and realize that it exists, because discoverability in today's ecosystem of gaming, especially with how many great indie games there are out there nowadays, can be really tough. Speaking of those titles, there's 6 in particular that we're going to be talking about today: Those Who Rule, The Last Spell, Into the Breach, Divinity Original Sin 2, Monster Train, and Astral Throne. All of these are games that I've either covered on the channel before or played extensively in my own time, typically before the channel existed, and as such I can personally recommend them from my own experience. Now, I want to be very clear about this. Just because these are the 6 titles that I'm recommending today does not mean that there's not other great titles on offer for Turn-Based Thursday Fest. There's absolutely an incredible selection of games that I've had recommended to me many, many times by those of you in the community as well as my friends that I just haven't had the chance to pick up and try for myself yet. So make sure you browse the whole offering and do so quickly, because this, at time of recording, is the last 24 hours of the event. So get on this stuff now if you want to get some good savings. I know I was supposed to get this video out sooner, and then, the tactics reveal happened. I was going to be covering a game every day. The tactics reveal happened. My apologies. Consider this my makeup for that. So, with important context established, how about we talk about the games? Starting off with Those Who Rule. Those Who Rule is a title that I've covered actually fairly recently on the channel, and if you want an easy point of comparison to more established games in the genre, think something like Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, very specifically Path of Radiance, but in a hex grid style, not the standard checkerboard style that we're used to with a lot of tactics games. Those Who Rule has a major focus on actual mechanical functionality of your weapons, with a lack of anything like mages and cavalry and things. We are looking at infantry battles with zones of control, maintaining battle lines, and having the proper upgrades and skill sets on your team to find success. I really enjoy the brutal difficulty of Those Who Rule. It doesn't have rewind mechanics. It doesn't have anything fancy like that to save you from yourself. If you mess up, and your characters will die. And I appreciate that in an era where a lot of tactics games have been softened in terms of their overall difficulty. You have a wide range of weapons to choose from: bows, axes, spears, swords, etc., with different variations of each of those weapon types within them. And to replace things like magic and cavalry, you have a lot of different movement abilities or area of effect damage, like, with big swinging claymores, being able to hit multiple targets in front of you, that type of thing, to keep things spiced up and interesting while still having a very grounded atmosphere and world. Speaking of that world, I do really enjoy it. You're basically just thrown into the shoes of 3 new recruits in the local special forces group, trying to figure out what the heck they're doing as a big sort of proxy war, shadow war starts to brew that, of course, they get involved in because they're part of the special forces. It's a story of political powers, people trying to navigate their way through it successfully while achieving what little bits of moral positivity that they can, and learning a lot more about each other in the process, and I really enjoy the cast. You've got varied mission objectives, some of which can be very difficult to achieve. Lots of different classes that you can promote into that give you a lot of fun different abilities, including combo attacks. A very tight inventory system that can make it pretty difficult to decide exactly what weapons and armor and accessories you want on a given character due to weight limits, but which makes it all the more satisfying once you figure out the perfect build for a given character. And there's a big value placed on armor and directional facing to make sure that you don't just get free hits on yourself or are able to tank certain attacks due to having enough armor to not have it all go through to your HP before you can regen your armor on the next turn. It's a very satisfying game to play. I very much recommend it, and as part of Steam Next Fest, it is currently 30% off, so $12.50 US. Not bad at all. Moving on to an older release that more of you are probably aware of, but which many of you probably are not, and which has received a lot of good press. This is The Last Spell. Here we're looking at more of a roguelike title, and it's a bit of a tower defense, hold the line defense mission type game, where you're dealing with waves upon waves of irradiated zombie hordes with a huge variety of different enemy types with different abilities and different ways that you need to navigate around them. I love The Last Spell. It's actually one of my favorite games that we've streamed on the channel in the past, and while I know some people aren't into the whole roguelike, roguelite idea, I do think it's handled well here due to the fact that you're defending different cities over time and getting more different types of weapons and armor that you'll then be able to buy and find in each night of defense. The way you can build out characters is extremely satisfying, with being able to blend tanks and mages, rogues and archers, sword fighters and hammer wielders and druids and shamans and all sorts of other fun stuff. All the classes that you would probably expect, with a huge focus on major AoE damage, which is extremely satisfying to watch happen as you just obliterate huge chunks of zombies. It's got a banging soundtrack, a really unique art style that I really enjoy, and the overall gameplay flow of setting up your team, building your defenses, buying gear, positioning yourself, and then handling the next waves as they come in for another night is a ton of fun. It's got a very interesting story. I love the idea of a fantasy world where spells were basically used to create nuclear weapons, and as such, your zombies are actually like irradiated mutant zombies, and you're trying to hold off long enough for the mages to eradicate all magic from the world, denying it to humanity, but also eradicating the zombie plague in the process. It's a ton of fun. I highly recommend it, and if it's something that you can tolerate in terms of a roguelike, roguelite scenario, you absolutely should. You can get a ton of time out of this one. If you're interested in picking up The Last Spell, it is currently 60% off for the base game, a whopping $10 US, and you can also get some DLC for a reduced price as well if that's something that you're into. I think you'll really enjoy this one. Moving on and sticking on the roguelike train for a little while longer, we're going to be discussing Into the Breach, and this is possibly the single most brutally difficult game that we'll be discussing today, at least for me. I've had a very on-again, off-again relationship with Into the Breach because I get so frustrated with it, or really I used to. I understand the game a lot better now, so it doesn't happen nearly as often. But Into the Breach is one of those games where you can just screw up and your run is done. You have like a rewind or two, sure, but you lose too much power at the beginning of a mission, you don't find the right upgrades at the beginning of a mission, you can just be done. That said, how does it work? You are a time-hopping pilot of a giant mecha who's trying to find as many different potential positive timelines for humanity to assist them and save more lives across the multiverse due to Earth being invaded by the Vec. Your classic sort of giant bugs, Starship Troopers, Helldivers 2-esque scenario, except, you know, kaiju-sized, which is terrifying. Every run, you'll select a team of 3 mechs, starting off with very locked-in specific ones that are focused around electric fog, or sumo-throwing enemies around, or having big shields, or applying ice to things. Very thematic, but as you go through the game and unlock more different teams, you can eventually get custom teams where you can pick whatever types of mechs you want, and you have a lot of different achievements and missions to work towards with every mission type and every team type. You unlock more upgrades, more color schemes, and more teams. That's probably one of my favorite things about the game, to be perfectly honest, just how many different creative mechs there are, and how really drastically it can impact the overall feel of the game, considering it is pretty simple. You take turns in a turn-based order, and you can see every single action that an enemy is going to take before they take it, or nearly every action anyway. So you can plan yourself accordingly to try and push enemies into each other, to have them kill each other, make sure that they're knocked out of the way of the buildings that you need to protect, to keep the power grid online so that your mechs stay online. There's only 4 zones, well, technically a 5th zone where the main boss fight is, but even so, there's a lot of different mission types, a lot of variety in terms of the individual maps themselves, and again, depending on what pilots and upgrades you get, there could be a lot that you have to handle between any given run. This one is on sale also for 60% off for only $6 US. Definitely give a recommend to this. Moving out of the world of much smaller indie titles as well as roguelikes into one that probably needs no introduction, but especially at the time of its release was still definitely considered indie, it is Divinity Original Sin 2. If you've played Baldur's Gate 3, as many of you I'm sure have, and you haven't checked out Divinity Original Sin 2, the previous title by the now legendary Larian Studios, you owe it to yourself to do so. It is essentially a tabletop pen and paper RPG brought to life with even more, dare I say, customizability in terms of how you approach combat and dialogue to make your way through the game. You have a big focus on different armor types between physical and magical and depleting them to be able to apply status effects to your opponents. Massive amounts of using different elements in the terrain to your advantage, putting down oil, lighting it on fire, then dousing the fire with water to create steam so enemies can't see, and then electrocuting the steam or poisoning the steam. There's so many different things that you can do with this, and combined with the sheer length of the campaign, how customizable every character and every class is, how huge each section of the game is with tons of different quests and different secrets to find. There is so much replay value that you can get out of this title. It's got some of the best characterization in RPGs that I have ever seen, and that is definitely saying something, seeing as how, characterization in RPGs is kind of a big deal. And the turn-based gameplay is incredibly satisfying in a way that other more traditional grid-based stuff sometimes really can't achieve, just in terms of how creative you can get. My buddies and I put in hundreds of hours with Divinity Original Sin 2, and I still have the urge to go back and play it constantly. I just don't have the time to start a new campaign right now. And considering that it is 70% off for this sale, only $13.50, you would really be doing yourself a disservice if you are at all interested in this title by not picking it up and checking it out for yourself. It's a little bit more dated than Baldur's Gate 3, of course. It came out in 2017, but it still holds up remarkably well, and I imagine you'll have a great time. Next up, we're moving a little bit outside the realm of turn-based, grid-based tactics, but still very strategic, with Monster Train, a roguelike card battler that, personally, I think is better than Slay the Spire. And I've seen a few people echo that sentiment, especially in my friend group. I know that's something that could very well get us crucified, but you gotta hear me out here. Monster Train features the forces of hell literally hopping on a train, with the last shard of the flames of hell itself rocketing towards the center of their home to reignite those fires after a major invasion from the angels of heaven. You'll be fighting through the various different circles of hell to get there, as well as the generals that have taken it over trying to stop you. And while it's a very simple sounding premise, the overall gameplay versatility and ridiculous heights of power that you can reach is what makes it so much fun to play. When you start a run, you'll be able to select 2 of the clans of hell. One is a primary and one is a secondary, and those clans will be what dictate what cards you're able to find throughout the run to build out your deck. You'll also choose one of the 2 champions that are specific to the lead clan that you chose, and that is absolutely also going to have a major impact on how you play, because typically you're getting a lot of buffs or synergies out of that champion that will make the rest of your army work much better. In each layer of hell, you'll have the opportunity to go to different shops, spend gold, buy new cards, upgrade cards, cull cards from your shop, get upgrades for your champion, or have random events happen that can get you all sorts of fun benefits like equipment, more cards, health boosts, etc. After you've done all of your looting and building and crafting, you'll go into a major fight, and this is where things get very interesting. The way Monster Train works is you have 4 layers of the train, starting at the bottom and then moving up to the top where the Pyre Heart is. Enemies will typically spawn on the first floor and face off with whatever monsters you've placed there, and anything that survives will then move up to the next floor to do it all over again. If enough enemies get to the Pyre Heart to deal damage to it, you'll die and you'll have to start another run. Of course, as you can imagine, this being a roguelite, there are a ton of different modifiers that can come into play with this, with enemies that will spawn on all floors simultaneously, or enemies that can jump floors without going to certain ones in the center, etc., etc. To counteract this, you'll have a bunch of different monsters with all sorts of different modifiers and abilities that you can place, from tanks to mages, things that deal sweep damage to the entire enemy party, to put status effects on them, as well as having a bunch of different spells that you'll be able to cast to either deal direct damage to the enemy, buff your guys, summon free guys, or put down traps that will cause all sorts of harmful effects for the enemy as they move around. Occasionally you'll run into major bosses that will move between floors freely and deal all sorts of damage and all sorts of negative status effects to your guys, and figuring out how you can successfully build out a deck to handle not only what army you're building to make them the most synergistic and effective, but also to handle whatever bosses and enemy types are coming up is a ton of fun. And moving up through the ranks of difficulty, getting new modifiers and new mechanics added each time you do so means that there's a lot of replay value here. If you're at all interested in Monster Train, it is 70% off as part of this deal for a whopping $7.50 US. And if you're even more interested, you decide that you really enjoy this one, Monster Train 2 did just come out, and I'm currently working on a video about just that, as I really do think it is the definitive version of a card-based deck-building roguelike game. Look for that video coming sometime in the near future. Finally, the last title we're going to be talking about today is coming full circle to another title that we covered semi-recently, Astral Throne. We're back in the world of grid-based, turn-based tactics, and while it is also a roguelike in a sense, it's far less focused on starting new runs constantly over and over, and having a much more long-standing campaign that, if you then lose, will still then have new unlocks and new features and new story development when you do start over. Set in a world where the stars seem to be falling and also converting people into either zombies or crazy cultists, definitely some eldritch phenomenon scenarios going on here, you choose two different heroes at the start of a run, as well as some generics that will come with them, to delve into the world and find out just what the hell is going on as you try to get to the capital. Along the way, you'll encounter a lot of different enemies, a lot of different fights that are very reminiscent of Fire Emblem, but with some other styles of tactics gameplay thrown in there. And by clearing these fights, you will of course level up, find new gear, etc. What's interesting about the leveling in Astral Throne, though, is you don't just get direct XP for your levels, but you level up your different stats and skills. And once you level up enough of those, you will then gain a full level where you'll be able to get different abilities and weapon affinities in a very roguelike fashion, where it'll be like, oh, here's 3 options, and you can choose which one works best for your build and keep building your character out from there. I really like this. It's a really elegant way to have a more traditional campaign for a tactics game while also incorporating things like character building and random abilities for a roguelike by giving you the ability to keep leveling up your skills and your stats without constantly throwing new options and power boosts at you. So the ones that you do get when you do get a full level feel much more meaningful and impactful. As you would probably expect for a game of the genre, you have a bunch of different weapon types with various different magic and bows, swords and hammers, and they all do have different affinities against each other with a sort of weapon triangle-esque feel, even though there's a lot more options in that quote-unquote triangle. The skills that your characters have can also have a major impact on the way that you play, being able to deal AoE damage, prevent enemy counterattacks, deal huge bursts of damage while healing yourself, sacrificing your health to deal damage to the enemy, healing your allies, etc. Between missions, you'll move across the world map with different various random events that you can choose as you make your way towards whatever the final fight of the continent is. These are actually a lot of fun, and there's a lot of variety to them. Sometimes you'll find random skirmishes. Of course, you'll be able to go to different shops where you can buy promotion materials, new weapons, skills that you can apply to be able to wield different weapons, and hell, even like mounts and other gear. Really cool stuff with that. I like that you can just put anyone on a horse at any time as soon as you find one. Really makes for some interesting class building. And you are able to do a lot of cross-class promotion stuff to make very interesting, unique characters as you progress through a run. The world itself is very interesting. I haven't had the opportunity to see the full breadth of the story and where it goes, but the fact that you have this sort of possession of the people, as it seems like the world is falling to these celestial entities, gives you a real sense of urgency as you make your way forward, because it really feels like you're in the middle of an apocalypse, and you might be the only party that can do anything about it. The characters themselves as well are a ton of fun, between your crazed berserker paladin Solaire XP, or your spellblade heavy armor knight with a sword and also magic who's like the disgraced princess, or just like a doctor who may not be as much of a doctor as he is a serial killer, because he's really good at critting people in the head with that knife. There's a lot of fun stuff going on here. It's a nice blend of roguelike and turn-based strategy RPG with a lot of influence from different titans in the genre like Final Fantasy Tactics and Fire Emblem, and that roguelike element means that, again, you have a lot of replay value here. I love the PS1 aesthetic that's also kind of like a little RuneScape-y. It's just a ton of fun, and I can't wait to find more time in my schedule to sit down and play a whole lot more of it. If you're at all interested in Astral Throne, it is currently 25% off on the sale for $15, which is a great deal for how much content you can get out of this game. And that, my friends, is my top 6 picks for 2025's Turn-Based Thursday Fest. I really hope that this video helps you find another game or 2 or 5 in the overall strategy and turn-based genre that you can enjoy. There's so many good games on offer here, so many things that I need to find the time to check out for myself. And that's not even talking about all the demos and previews and early access stuff that isn't even fully out yet that I could have also talked about here. But for today, I wanted to focus on just what's on sale, what's a good deal, to hopefully get some really good games into the hands of more of you. As always, support your local indie devs. I love indie devs so much. They are a huge backbone of our genre in particular, and the more support that we can show them by checking out their really high quality games, the better. If you do pick up any of these games for yourself, let me know in the comments, or if you've played some of the ones we talked about today and you want to chime in with your thoughts about them as well, please do so. I love to be able to revel in these games with y'all, and it makes me happy that I can introduce them to you guys, at least a little bit. For now, though, that puts a wrap on Turn-Based Thursday Fest. I have a bunch of other indie titles that did take part in the fest and the showcase that I will be talking about over the coming weeks, so keep an eye out for that. And of course, more Final Fantasy Tactics information as that comes out as well. Until then, though, my name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, be good to each other, y'all. Bye now.